On seeing that Tikam had done an unsatisfactory job doing the morning dishes, Rajiv washed them again. He stopped only when his grandmother expressed concern that he was working himself to death. I'll read a longer extract. It is my favorite extract. I read it at every reading, every launch, so I apologize if some of you have heard this before. It is from the eponymous story, the Gurkha's daughter. This cute little girl with the beautiful eyes that you see on the cover is an Arabic story. She's talking about her best friend, Gita. And Gita and she undergo a ritual to cement their friendship. How they do that, I'll now read. Gita was fair and clean and even brushed her teeth at night. She wore a maxi to bed and could run faster than any of us. She was better at Pittu than the boys, and so often completely toppled the tower of tiny stone slabs with a plastic cord that the boys always wanted her on their team. Gita was Gurunbara's daughter. Gurunbara was Appa's close friend from the regiment. Gurunbari and my mother claimed that they were related, but Appa, on more than one occasion, said that wasn't true. These Darjeeling women, he said, they jump to make everyone their relatives, never mind that they're of different castes and have not a drop of common blood. Tomorrow, your mother will look for that common blood in me. How can she even consider sharing the same blood as that child devil called Gita? I didn't say a word in defense of my best friend's monstrosity and instead conjured a memory of what she and I had indulged in the day before. Secret number one, the bigger secret. Would Appa be angry if he found out? Amma would be petrified. She had warned me countless times that eating what had touched someone else's mouth would cause boils all over my face. It was even worse than double dipping a samosa. I would get both my ears pulled, and she'd complain to Gita's mother, who could be a terror. Gurunbari sometimes even beat Gita with her special stick, the marks of which stubbornly stayed for days. But Amma would never find out. Gurunbari would never find out. It was our big secret, and no one would ever find out. It happened the first day of school after the winter break. Gita and I returned to my house from Ribs, our hated school, together. Amma wasn't in the house, and Appa was never home at this time when he was in the country, so we took the keys from the storekeeper down the street to find a steel bowl of cold rara waiting for me on the dining table. I pulled a stool to the shelves where the plastic bowls and mugs were stacked. I rinsed the bowl and carefully, for Amma wouldn't tolerate any spills on the dining table, I poured the soup from my bowl to Gita's. Twirling the spoon that Amma had left facing downward by the bowl, I cautiously wrapped some curly strands of noodles on it and transferred them to the other bowl, while Gita kept vigil to ensure that I wouldn't sneak a spoonful into my mouth. I repeated the process and then stepped back to inspect the two bowls. Gita weighed one bowl in her right hand and then the other in her left. She went with a steel bowl, which Amma would have approved of. For no guest, not even ill-mannered Gita, was to eat out of a steel bowl, while I used the plastic one, a sacrilege because plastic was meant strictly for guests. But that wasn't a big secret. After we slurped the soup and licked the bowl as deep as our tongues would allow, Gita had an idea. Aren't we best friends? Her pretty blue eyes sparkled. Yes, we are, I said. Then let's have a ceremony to prove that. What ceremony? I was excited. It was Gita's idea after all. You will spit into my bowl. Spit, spits it, and I will spit into yours. Spit, spit. And when the bowls are filled to the brim, we shall drink each other's spit. That way we will have each other in our bodies. We will be real best friends. Arduous is the task force, we persevere. I generated spit from my throat, from under my tongue, and summoned it from the depths of my stomach. Gita, despite having trouble, had already spat out far more than I did. My jaws acted funny, my tongue refused to cooperate, and my mouth felt the way it did when I didn't brush my teeth on non-school days. I coughed, I choked. I think the Rora I just ate wants to come out from my stomach, I said, afraid Gita would think me weak. Okay then, it should be enough. Gita gauged the depth of my bowl and inserting her little finger in the sea of spit. Here, you drink this, I'll drink that. And with 3 gulps, she would 1, and I would 2, we completed our fair ceremony to seal our friendship.
Yeah, would you like to say something about it?
Oh, you know, Namita Gurkha is here, and she's going to murder me if I do not read a translation in Nepali. So I'm going to read a few sentences of this book that my parents are helping me translate into Nepali. I started doing it, realized just how ill-equipped I was for the job, and had to rope in my parents' help, and they've been wonderful. So I'll read 3 sentences. Those of you who understand other languages should understand this. शिविर बाहिर बसेका एकजना ब्राह्मणले उनको बिहा रवि कार्की नाम भएको एउटा नेपालीसँग गरिदिए। उनी रविकी दोस्रो श्रीमती थिइन्। पहिलो श्रीमती पनि त्यो बिहेमा उपस्थित थिइन्। अनामिकालाई ती पहिली श्रीमतीलाई दिदी भनेर साइनो लाउनु भन्यो। पहिली श्रीमतीले छोरी नै छोरी पाएकी थिइन्। चौथी पनि छोरी नै भएपछि रविले अर्की भित्र्याउँछन् भन्ने थाहा भयो। शिविर बाहिरको मन्दिरमा विवाह सम्पन्न भयो। Thank you so much.
Yes.
Any people here who understand Nepali besides Ani? Oh, wow, lovely. Excellent. Thank you.
I now invite Neelima to please read an extract from Shoes of the Dead.
Before I begin reading, I'd like to explain why I write about farmer suicides and agrarian distress, and a little about the book itself. I live in big cities, most of us do, like I live in Delhi and Washington. But places like Vidarbha, which have seen many farmer suicides, have a restlessness about them. And that restlessness can travel beyond borders. This is my 3rd book on farmer suicides and agrarian distress. My last book, Death of a Money Maker, was about the growing anger in the Indian countryside, which often goes unreported. What is the reason for the rise of this angry Indian farmer who doesn't figure that much in the headlines or on television? There are many reasons. It's poverty, it's hopelessness, but it's also humiliation. In these districts where there are a lot of farmer suicides, the government has designed a unique device for the humiliation of these farmers. At least I consider it that way. These are called the suicide committees. These committees examine the death of a farmer, especially a suicide, and decide whether it is a farmer's suicide due to debt. Obviously, there's a government definition for debt, there's a government definition for suicide, and there's a government definition for who is a farmer. Once the suicide committee decides what is really a farmer death or suicide due to death, then the widow gets a compensation of 1 lakh. And if the suicide committee decides it's not a death due to debt, then the widow does not get that compensation, and the suicide is not decided as a farmer suicide. Out of 2 out of every 3 suicides are decided as ineligible for compensation, therefore not farmer suicides due to debt. Now, what are the government reasons for forming these committees? That is because the government wants to show it has gone through the proper channels, it has gone through the proper due process for deciding what are and what are not farmer suicides and provide the compensation. However, it also gives the government a way of controlling the number of farmer suicides, which usually reflect badly on the politicians who are representing these constituencies. And how does the government keep the number low? How does the government control the number? By making members of these suicide committees those people who are exactly the part of the problem, like local politicians belonging to one or the other party, big landlords, money lenders. We don't have members, as members, people who may be part of the solution, like sons and daughters of farmers who have committed suicide. They would know best what would stop people like them from committing suicide. My book, Shoes of the Dead, is a work of fiction, but here I have given a young farmer, the chance to be on a suicide committee and see how he can change this very interesting dynamic. I'd like to read, with your permission, from chapter 4 of my book. This book will be out in April, and I'd like to read chapter 4. In his 29 years, Gangiri Bhadra is the farmer. I'm talking about the young farmer who is educated, who is a teacher, and who is shaken by the death of his brother, whose death is not validated by the suicide committee. In his 29 years, Gangiri had always wanted what he could not have, and as one among the 3 children of the farmer, the list of things he could not have was long. Gangiri fought his way through college with the help of scholarships. He made it to university when they said he had no future to aspire to. He learned English when they said he had no past to refer to. He taught science to intimidate them and learned the arts to scandalize them. And now, when we look back, he was actually grateful for his detractors. In August, when his brother Sudhakar died, the road stopped traveling with Gangiri, as if there were no needles in his compass, no signposts in his language. He was lost in Gurkha, a village of just 4,500 people. It felt as if almost every one of the residents of the village came to meet him and left him overwhelmed by their unconditional affection. But Gangiri wondered why they never spoke a word about Sudhakar. Then his childhood friend Patrangi explained it to Gangiri. He said they feared referring to Sudhakar. He could have been any one of them. Every one of them knew they were Sudhakar. A farmer suicide waiting to happen. Then slowly, as if answering their own questions, the villagers told Gangiri what killed Sudhakar, what could kill any one of them: debt and organophosphate pesticide. Gangiri began to hate the farm that killed his father, his brother, the home in which his mother suffered long for lack of treatment before she died. He was determined to rescue his sister-in-law Padma and the children Sashi and Balu from it all. Padma reluctantly agreed to leave Gopur, and Gangiri set about looking for a bargain for the land and the house. It was a 4-acre farm. The house was many decades old, with a concrete roof built in better days but now neglected for years. The evening before the meeting of the suicide committee was to be held in the collectorate to decide how his brother had died. Gangiri sat on the porch of his home in Gurkha, watching the August moon rise amid the tamarind trees in the fields. He could not help wondering why the earth was driving her sons away from her heart. Were they doing something wrong? Were they being punished? Where were they supposed to go? Where were they supposed to return? His dark eyes sparkled in the moonlight with tears of loss that he could not explain. It was a much bigger loss than the loss of life, and a much deeper loss than the loss of faith. He felt guilt for letting the land go, for not fighting for it. Never he knew would he be home again, and never again would he be part of something that contained both his past and his future. From then on, he would live in the city but never belong to it. A man from nowhere, a man who was just a name on a salary check, a face on a photo ID, a voice on the phone. Part of the moving mass of people in a crowded bus, metro, local train. Part of the praying mass of people in a temple, mosque, church, hospital. Perhaps he was braver than Sudhakar. He was not merely killing himself, he was killing the farmer in himself. The news from the suicide committee was carried by the village officer or the Talati, a bald tall man who had known Sudhakar well. The committee verdict was that Sudhakar had not committed suicide due to farm distress, as claimed by his widow Padma. The case has been found to be apart or ineligible, and therefore the compensation was denied. The words sang through Gangiri's heart like lead, hardening every little cell, squeezing out every last emotion. He asked mechanically, then why did my brother die? Suicide due to continued depression and alcoholism, the Talati explained, but not due to burden of unpaid farm debt. Padma argued that Sudhakar was not an alcoholic. If they did not have money to buy food, how could Sudhakar buy liquor, she asked. The Talati countered, saying poverty never stopped anyone from drinking. Her voice was choked as she asked, are you saying we lied? The Talati smiled. As you said, you have no money, and 1 lakh rupees is a lot of money. Gangiri asked again in a stunned voice, are you saying we lied? The Talati now squirmed a little. I think the committee found reasons other than the ones you mentioned for your brother's suicide. Does the committee know my brother better than me or his wife? The Talati uneasily shifted in his seat. Why do you want to get into these details? You are right in planning to sell this place. Go back to your job in the capital. You were doing so well. This village was proud of you. Gangiri did not speak. I heard you turned down Gurkha Mahajan. Gurkha Mahajan, I just want to explain, is a money lender. He's a very big money lender, and he has lent money to Gangiri's family. I heard you turned down Gurkha Mahajan's offer to buy the land, the Talati asked in a lowered voice. He has wanted this land since my father's time, since the time he took away 1/2 of it to settle outstanding debts, Gangiri said grimly. If I can help it, I'll never sell him the other half. You misunderstand the man, Gangiri, the Talati said earnestly. He's not like other vati vyaparis or money lenders. He knew you would need the money, and it is difficult to find buyers at short notice. Gangiri glanced at him, realizing. So Durga Das knew the compensation claim would be turned down? You know how these things are, Gangiri. He wants the land. Padma stated them shocked. After a moment, Gangiri said, I have no choice, do I? You don't need a choice, insisted the Talati. I will draw up the papers myself and get your signatures tomorrow. You can pay me later for my assistance. Just one doubt, Gangiri said. If what you are saying is true, tell me how does Gurkha Das Mahajan manage the committee, headed by the collector himself, to vote the way he wants? The Talati smiled. Gurkha Das Mahajan has the financial records of everyone on the committee. Their income, debt, investment. Those he cannot control, he leaves to a partner holder. Together they make sure the majority of the committee votes in their favor. Even the collector cannot question such verdicts. Gangiri nodded, his heart filling up with anger but his lips smiling in gratitude. You are right. It is kind of him to have spared a thought for me. If you can give me some time, I shall soon speak to you about the land. The Talati left, asking Gangiri not to take too long. There were many such farmers. Different names, same fate. As Gangiri heard the stories, he once again found himself wanting something that was denied to him, something he could not have, justice. He then made a decision to make sure no farmer was ever humiliated again. no widow ever caught alive. Suddenly, the small village of Kota started making sense.
I think let's maybe get in some questions, and maybe you could read it. Does any member of the audience have a question for either of the authors? Okay, I actually had a question for you, Prajwal. After hearing Neelima's extract, I mean, we do know that how corruption and it affects every aspect of our lives, and of course what she's written about is very pointed. But even in terms of your short stories, I mean, they're more in the nature of sort of echoes rather than screens in terms of the title of the session. But how does corruption, does it affect the characters that you talk about in their idyllic mountain homelands?
Not in this book. Not in this book. Yeah, corruption is strangely absent from my stories here. But my novel, which is called Land Where I Flee and will be out in December of 2013, has a lot about it. It is a novel where 4 siblings living in various parts of the world convene in Gangtok, Sikkim, my hometown, to celebrate their grandmother's 84th birthday, and things like that. So yes, there will be bits and pieces of it.
And why do you think that this particular book does not have what we might call the harsh realities of living in South Asia?
It does. It's just that corruption is absent. I didn't set out to write a book that would address a zillion social and political issues. I simply set out to write stories of these characters. The fact that there are social issues ingrained in there somewhere goes on to prove just how deeply rooted these issues are in our lives. So I like to write character-led stories. I was fascinated by what you were reading because you've approached your novel in an entirely different way from how I approach my writing, which is wonderful. And yes, so the issues sort of take a backseat, and it's the characters that are pushed to the forefront.
It's the human drama.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Star plus family drama in Wales.
And Neelima, in your work, obviously there is, you're drawing very much from what you have seen and experienced in, Darbhanga or other parts of the country where farmers are, I mean, this is a stark reality that's staring us in the face right now. So how do you, my question to you is, how do you go from a reportage style to fiction? How do you make that switch? Or how do you make that, transition?
Yeah, very good question. Thanks. It's actually not very easy. I have been a journalist for 18 years, and you tend to tell the story about 800 words. So it takes a bit to sort of go from there to writing a full novel of about 300 pages. And but I think there are a few things one gets from journalism, which is the ability to, I guess, ask the question and ask the right question and keep asking the question till you get to what you perceive as comparatively the truth. I mean, I'm not saying the truth because that is difficult, but that's the training which is valuable as a journalist. The other thing which, as a journalist, I think I brought to this book also and my earlier books is the larger picture. Having covered not just these issues but also politics or the main political parties of this country, you know where these issues fit into the political spectrum of various political parties. Why are they marginalized when they are marginalized, these issues, and when they are promoted as the main issues and you see them making headlines, you know exactly why that's happening. So there is that bigger picture which one tries to get rid of, when you're trying to write the descriptive parts of the book. But it does come into the book, and I think it helps in understanding the issues.
And in terms of constructing the human drama, like Prajwal is talking about, that's such a big part of writing fiction, isn't it? So how do you manage that? Because I know journalists are usually opposed to looking at the facts and the story and try to excavate the truth. But what about the relationships? How do you create those?
Well, I think in cases like the Gurkha, where there have been many pharmacy-sites, all one needs to do, at least all I had to do, was to go and meet some of these widows. Some of these widows who even after 3 years or even more, 8 years, they can't keep the tears from their eyes. I mean, didn't really need to have special skills to write what I saw in these villages, and probably I would perhaps write better if I had training as a non-fiction writer, a fiction writer. But in Vidarbha, the emotion is quite out there, and so is the anger.
It's very, the drama is very palpable. Prajwal, in terms of the characters that you have created, do they have a basis in real life? Like, did you also meet people with these compelling personal stories and journeys, and where did you mine your...
Mix and match of everything. You borrow a trait from a relative you don't like and marry that with an ex, and then throw a cousin's idiosyncrasies in there, and sprinkling of some hideous characteristics. So yeah, you have these characters there. Just to touch up a little bit on what you were talking about journalistic writing. It's very interesting. I wrote a story on Bhutanese refugees in the languishing in the camps of Nepal, and when I first went to the refugee camp or went to Bhutan, I had all these notes, and the first draft of my story read like a newspaper report. It did. It was full of facts and figures, it was just a very, very, very mundane piece of writing. So it was very challenging to extract whatever information I could from that very boring piece of writing and convert that into an interesting story. So again, I don't know how you do it, but what you were reading was amazing. I realized how difficult it is.
Because a lot of the stories are left between the lines. As we were discussing before the show, that you do report what you see, but you also take back home a lot of stories which go unreported. And I think that's what helps it to putting them down as well.
And also in terms of, because when you're reporting something, there is this element of distance that you do step back, you do look at it as a witness and not a participant. Whereas, and does that affect what you notice about what's happening? You obviously notice the main event that's happening, but what about the color of the leaves of the tree under which everything is happening? So does that kind of detail come later, or is it part of what your gaze takes in when you're looking at something? It's for both of you.
Actually, that's again a great question, because I think one of the things a journalist does, because one is used to visualizing constantly what a story would look like, how does it go, how many columns it is. So you are also visualizing the scene, the spot as we say, where the news is actually happening. So even if I have not written the words sitting in Vidarbha, in let's say the tehsils of Yavatmal or Amaravati, even if I come back and write down the notes in Nagpur, I have carried a glimpse of that place where the cotton was being stored, or where the tamarind trees are growing, with me with my notes in some sort of a photographic thing. So I think that really helps, because as I said, we have this training in visualization. So that helps too.
It depends on the story for me. I realized when I was writing a story based in Gangtok that I was going crazy with descriptions. The story almost read like a tourism brochure of the government of Sikkim. It did. So I had to get rid of a lot of flowery words there. I think it depends on the story. I set out to write a story and then I sit down and the story takes wings of its own. Somehow the descriptions are often relegated to the back burner. So I do not have a set rule about how to do it, but I have not really incorporated as much as the color of the event yet. It happens in the writing process or the first couple of editing processes, or rather than toward the end.
And where did you get the spit hole incident from? That was quite
it hasn't been borrowed from anywhere actually.
Is it from your life?
I was about to go with the topic of initials or the rest, which I've seen a lot of people do. I thought that would be a little cliche, and then it was a flash of genius. So that makes sense.
Let's attribute some of the bright spots to just pure genius. Does anybody from the audience have a question? Yes, sir. Sorry.
Good morning, ma'am. My question is to you, ma'am. You said you came from Washington and you also resided in Delhi. What makes you write a book on suicides by farmers and exploring the remotest areas like Vidar or some of the other areas that you mentioned? So the primary question is, why? Why from Washington to Vidar? That's one. And I would also like to add to this that somebody said that people inwardly are the same everywhere, in every part of the world. That is precisely the reason that we all connect, despite a lack of communication and lack of understanding of each other's language. What is your take on this, ma'am? And I also like to know this.
Thank you very much for the question. You're right, actually. It matters a lot to me that I connect and I stay connected to India. That's one of the fundamental things. And I think you feel more of the lack of that connection, or the need of that connection, when you're not residing in India. Of course, that's one part. But as far as Vidarbha is concerned, as I said, there's a restlessness about it. That's a problem waiting to be solved. And it has to be solved. If we are looking at a happy, or not even a happy, or stable society, we must look at the problems of the countryside and try to solve them. And this is I think, the most symptomatic of what's ailing our countryside. And that restlessness has stayed, honestly, it is something which will probably stay with me wherever I go, because it takes me back there every time. and it's a very clear case of not paying enough attention to the finer points of it. It's not, as I said, like for instance the suicide committee. It could have been, perhaps this was the best solution they could find. Perhaps this was the best that the government could do. But it can be done with a far more grace. It can be done with a far more respect to the farmers and their widows and the families which are grieving. Now these are the factors, even if I'm on the North Pole, I'm going to keep thinking about it. So that's what brings me back to the river.
In that case, why only Vidar? Oh, it's the last question.
No.
In that case, why only Vidar? Why not any other region? Not trying to challenge anything.
No.
Just asking you, there are several problems everywhere, in every part of the world, and India also has several problems. So why only Vidar?
I think that's because of the intensity of the problem there. Because it actually takes away a life of a father, a brother. It leaves the children orphans. They are carrying this thought with them them to the next generation. When we are talking about the next generation India, we should also remember the memories the children are carrying with them. And some of these memories are of fathers killing themselves, dying because of the humiliation of the money lenders, or because they can't pay back simple debts which a majority of this country can afford.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, at the back. Yes.
नमस्कार। आपकी इस बात को आगे दिखाते हुए मैं थोड़ी सी टिप्पणी भी करना चाहूँगा और आपका एज ए जर्नलिस्ट उसका जवाब भी दूँगा आपसे। आत्महत्या मैं इसलिए नहीं करूँगा कि मैं अपने शरीर को डिस्ट्रॉय करना चाहता हूँ। I'll commit a suicide not because I want to destroy my body. I'll probably do it because I'm so depressed, so traumatized by the environment around me, by the circumstances around me, and probably that is and that is why these things are happening across the poor farmers. Now, my question to you is, Neelima ji, you have very sensitively understood the dynamics of these compensation committees which the government has created to address this problem. Did you, at any time, observe, I can understand, there's a lack of effort by the government, the strategies are wrong, the entire issue is, is not to compensate, it's more to take over the assets and all that. But did you notice among the community any energies to make the society responsible, the community responsible for making committees to help the farmer change his environment rather than destroy himself? Did you find any kind of societal effort, community-based effort to make a change in the environment of the farmer so that he doesn't destroy himself, but the environment changes and he manages to survive? Did you notice any of such energies, please?
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपके प्रश्न के लिए। आत्महत्याएं आपने बहुत सही कहा, पर्यावरण और जो एनवायरनमेंट होता है उसकी वजह से होती है। It is due to the environment also that a farmer probably commits suicide, and a lot of that environment is influenced by the informal debt structure of the villages, which is fundamentally controlled by the money lenders, sahukars or mahajans as they are called. Now, no farmer is ever going to complain against a money lender. Now, that is one of the biggest problems biggest aspects of this problem. It is very difficult because they are constantly dependent on them. Now, the question is, why are they so dependent on money lenders who lend money at very high interest rates? That is because banks are reluctant to lend to poor farmers. This is one of the fundamental interventions which the government is trying. I should not say that the government is not trying to do to remedy this. It's not like that. The financial inclusion, which includes more and more farmers into the formal loan structure, has been going on. But it's not as easy as taking money from a money lender. And that's an environment when the farmer is unable to pay back the debt. It's a huge amount of burden on him. It's a matter of humiliation in front of the entire village, probably his own community. It's not something which he can live down or forget about. He faces it every day when he steps out of his home. His wife faces it, his children face it. As far as the suicide committee and what effort the government is doing to address the environment in which they are living, I have not been able to see much. That's mainly because, as I said, the suicide committees have members who are part of the problem. They don't have as members people who are can be part of the solution. Ideally, the suicide committee should also have people who have been affected by crop failure or debt, who have had suicides in their own family. Then they can come and talk about what really kills them, what really is the problem, But they don't have those people already. But I think the community effort inside a village is sometimes very helpful. I think inside a village, common people who are equally poor, equally hopeless, and equally on the brink of probably thinking of, a drastic measure, come and help those who have just gone through this tragedy.
Yes, there's a question.
Choose to write fictionalized as fiction rather than non-fiction. For
think it's up to the author to make it interesting so that everyone can read it. Even if, maybe it can be very simply put. That's one of the things which I try in my books, that to simplify it, make it, I would like to read a book like that. And that's why I like to write about. And I think that writing about villages, which I have done in my reporting, but as I said, I always felt that there were stories I was bringing back from the villages, which I was not able to report because they didn't fall in the journalistic framework of reporting. They didn't have quotes, they didn't have photos, they didn't have names, age, address. They were this feeling which you come back with, which has to be articulated, but you can't put it in a newspaper or a magazine article. And that's where I write. So I hope, of course, that there is a wider audience, in the hope that I am putting it in the right way. I hope I'm putting it in the right place so that people can relate to it. Thanks.
Yes, there's two questions.
Question is to Prajwal. The media reports that writing this book, the publishers invested a lot of money in advance, kind of broke all kind of records. And then secondly, like how did this come about? And secondly, instead of a voluminous novel, you come out with a book of short stories, which was again a surprise. So you could throw light on this.
Wait, your first question was about, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Would you repeat your first
Yes,
question?
The first question is that the publishers have given you a big advance for writing this book, which seems it has broken a lot of records. What is given to other writers maybe a big usage too. So how did that come about? Right? How did they have that kind of faith?
He's just brilliant. He's brilliant. That's why.
So what kind of background that they could have that kind of faith in you. And then you wrote this book of short stories. Why not a novel?
Thank you. See, my publishers, Quakers, published T. Lawson's books, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo trilogy, and made a ton of money with the sales of the book, which is why I think they could afford to take a risk on a debut short story writer who had not written anything before this, like me. And when I wrote this book, I was completely naive with the market. I knew nothing about the stepdaughter treatment that that publishers in the West endow on short story collections. Somebody told me that the short story has been dead since 1959. We don't know these things. In India, we get extremely excited because Jhampa Lahiri made her debut with a collection of short stories. Damian Manudin, the Pakistani-American writer, made his debut with a collection of short stories. I knew nothing. I wrote a collection of short stories only because I thought a novel would be a very, very difficult thing to accomplish. After I wrote the novel, I realized that writing a collection of short stories was a lot more difficult than the novel, but that's another story. One of the reasons I signed with Quakers when there was interest from other publishers too was because Quakers said, you know what, we will publish the collection of short stories first. Many in the publishing industry commented that we were committing publishing suicide of sorts because we had both a novel and a collection of short stories. There has been no suicide, life is good. But many said that. And one of the reasons I signed with Quakers was because the editor believed in the form, irrespective of what the market for it is like. And we've realized now that the market for it is thriving. Thank God for that. But I know how difficult it is for short story writers in the West. I've seen it. The minute I joined Oxford for the Masters in Creative Writing there, everyone told me, you know what, you may have a good collection of short stories, but I will warn you, it's not going to take you anywhere, write the novel. And I wasn't about to invest time, money, and energy into a novel if my first book hadn't found a house by then. If my first book wasn't going to find a house, why would I write a second book? I'm sorry, I'm one of those writers. Completely, I like the money that comes with writing. I do. because I need to pay a mortgage, I need to pay bills. These are important things. Does that answer your question in a roundabout way, or did I touch upon everything? Wonderful.
But just as a follow-up to that, and now you're writing a novel, so...
The novel is done.
It's done.
Yeah, it is going to be out. It was a 2-book deal that I signed with Puppets. The first was a collection of short stories. The second would have to be a novel. I don't know what my third book is going to be about. It might just be a sequel to these stories. You never know.
What?
Yes, thank you. I've been enjoying this conversation. I really like the contrast that was made initially about why, about the different styles. We're making a case about a certain kind of situation, whereas you were talking about characters and where the story takes you. So let me, and I think Neelima has made the point that that's why she writes this kind of thing. May I ask you that question? Why do you write about character? What is it? Is there something deep, or is it some sort of compulsion?
I have a story to tell. I think that's the most glib answer I can give you, but I have a story to tell, and I want to tell these people's stories. A lot of people have asked me, okay, do you write to throw light on the Burmese refugee situation? Do you write to throw light on the Gurkha issue that's taking place in West Bengal? I mean, these are all issues very, very close to my heart, yes. But if I want to throw light on these issues, I'm going to use one-on journalism. I'm going to maybe write an opinion column. I write fiction with the desire to tell a story. All these, whatever social political issues that you find in these stories happen to be somewhat circumstantial and coincidental. So, yeah, we are from totally opposite ends of the spectrum, which is why I am so excited about the whole team. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being such a wonderful audience, and thank you, Prajwal, and thank you, Neelima, for sharing your writing with us. Thank you.